Cool. Let's kick it off. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sprint 36, Fleet version 4.64.0, codename Krypton. Got a planet Krypton here behind me. Tried to find a joke about Krypton, but none of them got a reaction. So I'm going to be noble and hand it off to George.
Perfect. Slow clap. Alrighty, getting us started off is a quick one with Gabe Hernandez and then followed by Victor.
Hey guys, share my screen real quick. Okay. Yeah, this was a quick improvement. So the user story was, as an IT admin, I want to get a clear error message when uploading macOS profiles with the same name so that I can understand what happened and troubleshoot it more easily. Basically, before the error message we were surfacing wasn't the most helpful. So this was just improving those messages. So if I go to Fleet, I'll try to make my screen bigger for everyone. Before I do that, I'm over in the controls page, and on the OS settings tab, I'm in the custom settings section. So I'm going to add a profile. This profile is going to be called, let me make sure I do the right ones. Just call that one test one. That one uploads fine. I'm going to upload another profile. It's a different profile, but it's going to have the same name within it. And when I try to do that, we get this error message, basically just a bit more helpful than what it was before. So that is through the UI. You can see that. Just to show real quick, I'll do it one more time so you can see that you get the same message in the API. It's probably real small for you guys. But yeah, you get the same message in the API. And then also, if you're using the GitOps flow, hope this works. We'll see. I mean, I know it works, but I was jumping between. Yeah, there you go. So same message. Yeah, so basically all the three flows, you get a slightly improved error message when you upload two profiles that have the same name. And that will work across mobile config, XML for Windows, and the JSON files for DDM. So it works for all types of configuration profiles we support. That's it. Any questions?
Was this just for macOS?
No.
No, so this one will work with Windows XML profiles as
Awesome.
well.
Great.
Yeah.
Alrighty, next up is Victor.
All right, thank you, George. I'm gonna share my screen with sound. The sprint, we looked into Android and how we can add Android to Fleet. The Android communication goes completely through Google's, through their API, so the devices do not communicate, will not be communicating directly to Fleet server. They'll be going through Google, unless at some point we add an agent, which we may want to do for additional telemetry or screen sharing or some other reasons. But let's go ahead and jump into this video. Let's take this guy's a little slow. Let me speed him up a little bit. Take a look at some initial work that we've done regarding how we're going to add Android support to Fleet. So let's look at a few API endpoints that are experimental. So first we need to kind of set up Android MDM. So if we call this endpoint, we're going to get a URL where we can go and set up our Android MDM. We'd have to create an admin account and go through all this flow. And I believe for premium customers, we may be doing that for them, but free customers may need to do this themselves. Then after the enterprise is set up, we need to add a policy. We need to have at least one policy that we can associate to an enrolled device. So here, in our case, we just put together a default policy that's largely hard-coded. But here's an example of kind of what you can have in a policy. So a policy is just a big JSON file where you can have different things, time lock, disabling, enabling certain things, a whole bunch of settings, and I expect this list is going to keep expanding. So next, let's actually enroll a device. So we can get an enrollment token, which an enrollment token could be like a permanent token that multiple devices can be used, or it can be a one-time token. It can also expire. So let's go ahead and grab a token. So we have a token here, and let's see if we can enroll our device. So there's multiple ways to enroll a device. You can have a QR code the device reads, you can go to a website, or you can use an app. So in our case, on our device, we're going to go ahead and go to a website. So it is enterprisegoogle.com Android enroll, and then this ET stands for enrollment token. So we'll just grab this one from here. Okay. Let's go ahead and go through this flow. And the policy that we created, it contains some settings to make sure we're gathering a lot of telemetry from the device. In addition, it disables the camera. So in here, this device is going to have a work profile and a normal profile. So I believe at this point it is applying the policy. Pauses here. Well, one thing I don't like about this flow is like it comes back to this website and it looks like you have to click again. It's a little confusing how they did it. Just a comment. Okay, and it is done. So let's go back home, and then if we swipe down, oops. Oh, I think swipe up. Yeah, swipe up. We've got a work profile and a personal profile. So I mentioned we are disabling the camera. So if we try to use the camera here, it'll say the security policy prevents use of camera. So that's one use case for Android, is applying the policies to make sure a device behaves in a certain way. Another major use case is that now the work apps are separate from the personal apps on this device, right? So our users will want to install enterprise apps in their work profile. So let's take a look at how the device looks in Fleet. I do need to refetch this data from Google. Normally, how we're going to do it is we're going to subscribe to a pub sub feed, and so once the device is enrolled, Fleet will immediately know it. But in this initial POC, I basically have a job that I trigger that fetches all the device info. So I'll pause to trigger that job. Okay, let's go jump into Fleet, and we can see our device is in an OT. It was just fetched. We can see it's Android operating system. A few things that we don't have, like we don't have the IPs. Also, it's a BYOD device, so the serial number is not a real serial number. It's what they call an enterprise identifier. So we may want to change how we're displaying the device. This is the bundle number. We know the manufacturer, Samsung in this case, so we could add this Samsung identifier here. But let's take a look at all the data that we're getting from the Android device. Some device settings. This is the hardware information we're getting. We know it's Samsung, QCOM. We have the model number. This is the enterprise specific ID that I just mentioned. We are getting some timestamps. We know the enrollment time, when we last synced to the policy, when this status report was generated. We know the RAM and the disk information here. We know it's a personally owned device. We have some identifying information here. We know the software info, which Android build, the kernel version, things like that. We can also expand these memory events and just look some additional info about the memory when external storage was detected or RAM was measured. We also have information on the software. So if we go up here, this is actually the biggest chunk of information about the apps. So we have display name, package name, version code, version name. A lot of these are not user-facing. This one is user-facing, my files. So we could easily pull all this information into Fleet. All right, so that's it regarding the Android POC. So I think we'll be we'll be working on the next sprint to continue development so that we can have something in the Q1. The other POC that we basically refreshed, I believe maybe I demoed this earlier, that myself and Sarah did the original demos. I basically updated that demo to show with DigiCert because we finally got access to DigiCert. So in that demo, I show some DigiCert screens. But basically, it's just a refresh of previous demo videos. And both of these demo videos are available on YouTube. I think the DigiCert is on our Fleet channel, and the Android demo is linked here. And that's it for me. Back to Luke.
Great, thank you, Victor. That's awesome progress. Great to see that connection. Next, over to the orchestration product group and Sharon.
Thank you, Luke. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so we have, so both Jacob and Scott could not make it today, so we have videos for that. We'll start with a demo of adding host type radio buttons, distinguishing servers and desktops, so we can install or not install the desktop. Start with that, 1 second.
When an admin is adding a Windows or Linux host to Fleet, they are now going to see, in place of the former Include Fleet Desktop checkbox, this radio selection of workstation or server, which is more relevant to what they're thinking about, which is what kind of host is this? Is it a workstation, in which case I'll want Fleet Desktop, or is it a server, in which case they will not? When an admin is adding...
That was the first. Second thing is requiring password when changing from SSO to password. So let's see that.
When updating a Fleet user's authentication from single sign-on to password-based, Fleet will now require the inclusion of a new valid password. So if we create a test user with single sign-on authentication, and we try to change this user's auth method to password without including a password, the UI will first tell us we need to include a password, and if we try the same from the API, we'll see that it requires a password itself. So the ID of that user is 13, and if we try to modify that with this payload, which disables SSO but doesn't include a password, we should expect an error telling us that a new password must be provided. Now, if we provide a password that's valid, should work all right. Great. And that goes for the UI as well. So let's go back to single sign-on, and we'll try that same change from the UI and see that it works. Okay, converting to password. No problem. Now, what if we want to edit this user And we think we want to change the single sign-on. Oh, but we changed our mind back to password. That is going to be just okay, since the user in the database has been password off that entire time.
Okay, and third from Jacob is improving UX for scripts, editing, listing, etc.
The Fleet UI now sports a new updated design for listing scripts on the controls page. Here's the old design, where the user has to click right on the script name to see the script details, and they see the same redundant action buttons on the right here for every script. They also don't have any nice visual feedback for which row they're hovering over. In the new UI, the user has a nice darkened background on hover, they get the cursor, and they can click anywhere in the row to see the script details, except on any of these 3 action buttons, which you'll notice only show up when the user is hovering over the row. When they click the pencil, they get the edit modal. You'll see more of that later. When they click the download button, they'll download the script. And when they click the delete button, they'll delete it.
And that was Jacob's features. And let's move to Scott. So 2 things by Scott. One is improving Makefiles DB snapshot and restore targets. Let's see the video.
For developers, the new snapshot tool allows you to quickly save the state of your Fleet environment and restore it at a later date. This can be really handy when you have a typical setup that you like to start with when working on new features or fixing bugs. For example, I have a basic setup snapshot here that has my basic username and password that I always use. And you'll see that it has some settings already filled out that take some time to do every time you start up. So I've got my SMTP settings here, I've got SSO settings, I've got a couple of teams set up. After I've been using this for a while, I might end up, say adding some policies and some other stuff to my team. And at a certain point, I might want to revert back to a cleaner state while not losing all of the work that I've done here. So I'd simply go ahead and make a new snapshot. And then I can easily restore back to a previous one. And you'll see that I can log in again. And the data that I entered is gone, but my team is the same way it was when I first applied the snapshot. The first iteration of this tool is an extension of the existing DB backup and restore tools. It just allows for multiple named backups. Planned feature upgrades would allow easier sharing of the snapshots between developers, optional reconciliation of database migrations, as well as additional metadata like Fleet environment variables and OS query perf node keys. I'll just end by noting you can share the snapshots now by zipping up the snapshot folder. So if you go under your home Fleet snapshots, every snapshot is in its own subfolder. So you can zip one of these up and send it to somebody, and they can unzip it in the same .fleet snapshots folder, and they would have access to that snapshot as well.
Okay, and next we have update policies and queries, all teams empty states. So better copy. Let's see that.
Fleet has improved the language and layout of the empty states for policies and queries pages. This helps clarify which teams have existing policies and queries. On the policies page, with all teams selected, the page now explains that you have no policies that apply to all teams, rather than just stating that you have no policies. It also moves the Add Policy button from directly under the message to the top right. This makes the empty state more consistent with other states and de-emphasizes the importance of creating policies for all teams. When a single team is selected, the language changes to reflect that no policies exist for that particular team. And we can see that the same changes have been applied to the queries page. For users of the free tier, the language more broadly states that you don't have any policies, while still moving the button to the top right for consistency.
Okay, and that's it from Scott, and we'll move to Lucas next. Lucas, please take it.
Hi, folks. I'll share my screen. All right, so this is the issue of the desktop ad support for Firefox and Wayland display server. So this is like a very requested issue or like feature or bug. And I'll explain first why we want this. So Wayland is the display protocol, and in the past it used to be like X11, and now it's like all distributions are moving from X11 to Wayland to this protocol. So from the Wikipedia article, you can see that, Fedora is starting to use Wayland since version 25, pretty old version. Ubuntu since 21, Red Hat, Debian, like every major distribution is starting to use Wayland by default. So if you download any VM and you install the VM from scratch, then it will have Wayland as display server, not X11. So the initial implementation of Fleet Desktop for Linux had support only for X11. So one of the workarounds we used to tell users like, okay, use X11, but that's not good because we're basically telling the user change this your whole experience just to use Fleet. So we don't want that. We want to support Wayland, so that's what we did here. I'm gonna show just real quick. All right, so before showing the demo, so in the past, like it used to be X11 client is a kind of high level overview of what X11 is. You have X11 client. This is like, for example, your browser that needs to display Windows, right? And it will talk to an X server. I think it's called Xorg on the name of the server, and then the server will just display. But now we have Wayland protocol, and we have Wayland server on new distributions, and clients have to use the Wayland protocol to display Windows. Now, this was not like a sudden change. They actually added, the X server added an X Wayland for compatibility, so that X clients, imagine all applications that are supported, that support only X11, they can use Wayland through this X Wayland that acts as a Wayland client. So anyways, Fleet Desktop now supports Wayland, and that only means that the real change here is that if customers were having issues with the tray icon, this is a Ubuntu 22, clicking on my device wasn't working. That was the main problem there, which is a big problem. They couldn't get to the page. Now it works. Let me just show you that this is a Wayland session. You can see if it is an X11 session, it will say X11, otherwise Wayland. And then if I change my default browser to be Firefox, which is the case for when you install, you'll get Firefox as default. It should also work. We also fixed a few bugs where if you click multiple times, it wouldn't open the same again there. So, okay, so this is fixed, and this was tested on just to like on 20 with X11, on 22 with X11, on 22 with Wayland, on 24 with X11, on Fedora 38, 39, 40, 41, and on Ubuntu 24 with X11. Anyways, it's now working. I'm pretty confident. I think it went through QA, and we will release this to the Edge channel possibly today. And just one last note on this, we got some really good feedback from the community. This is a prospect, and they basically did some research on how we could fix this. And I actually added a thank you note to the user on our changelogs because we actually used their solution. So yeah, super happy to see this.
Thank you, Lucas. And next we have Dante with 3 features. Take it, Dante.
Hey, just let me share my screen here. Hey, so in this feature, make scripts editable in the Fleet UI, we address something that I think a lot of people have been waiting for with regards to scripts. The user story reads, as an admin, I want to be able to edit scripts within the Fleet UI so that I can quickly fix typos and errors without having to download and re-upload the script. As you can see, here in the UI we have a Hello World script. If we open it, we'll see, uh-oh, I made a typo. Fortunately, now in Fleet, you can just click the pencil icon, edit your script, click Save, and the script is now ready to be run with all your corrections made. For this feature, we've added 2 new abilities to the List Hosts API, the ability to populate users and labels. As an IT admin who exports host data from Fleet into my asset management tool, I want to populate user and label data using the same getHosts API, so that I can use this data in my host records in the asset management tool. We can see here on this team I've got 1 host, and I'll show you what that looks like using the API. So what I'm going to use here for the demonstration is the Fleetctl API tool. It's just a way that is going to make it easier to get data out of the Fleet API, but effectively when I call Fleetctl API hosts, we're hitting this endpoint, API latest Fleet hosts. And here I'm just using team 0 to make sure I'm getting this team. We can see here, the regular response looks like this. We've got all the regular data, but you'll notice there's no users and no labels. What we can do now is if we add these 2 new query options, populate users equals true and populate labels equals true. In the same query, we also get the list of users on those hosts and the labels associated with the hosts. So in this feature, we add the ability to run bash scripts from Fleet. As an IT admin, I want to run scripts with bin bash on macOS and Linux so that I don't have to rewrite existing scripts to prevent them from failing. We can see in our copy here, everything now indicates that we support bin sh, bin zsh, and bin bash. And we can see here I've uploaded a bash script that clearly starts with user bin bash. And we just do a small check here for the bash version to ensure that it works properly. And if we go to our hosts and check out the demo team, you'll see I have a Linux machine here. I can run the script. Now we just have to wait a second for this script to finish running. You can see it's the script I just showed. There we go, finished running. And we can see here, it returns the bash number, the bash version number, because it ran through bash. There we go. Those are the 3 features.
Thank you, Dante. And Luke, that's the list of features. We'll be back with improvements and some Square contributions later.
You're my
Awesome.
hero. You're my hero, Dante.
Cheers.
Yeah, a lot of great feedback in the chat. Also, it looks like a question for you in the chat, Dante. Can the macOS setup experience script be edited as well?
That's a great question. I don't think that was part of this PR because it was only for the list of scripts, but we can definitely check it out.
Cool.
It makes sense to add that as a separate feature request, for sure.
Yep. All right, cool. Thank you, Team Orca. A lot of great product maturity and UX improvements. So awesome to see that, especially on the Linux side. And next up, we're over to Software Product Group and Tim Lee.
Team Orca, is that official?
I don't know. It's up to them.
Not yet, but it could be a slang thing. That's okay.
All right, we're going to start off. Software team's been doing really great work. I'm excited to kind of piggyback on some of the existing UI consistency changes I've been seeing so far in this demo. We're going to continue that. Rachel is, out today. So I'm going to be demoing, showing some of the videos here. The first story up here on the dashboard page, as a user on the logged in homepage for a particular team, I wanted to see only platforms for the host on that team so that I can ignore platforms that aren't relevant to that team. This video.
The dashboard host count card's got a facelift. So if you look at this, if you have 3 different platforms, it's only going to show those 3. There's a little bit more responsive design to this. So you see once we reach a little bit less of a screen, total host gets its own row. And now we have a total host card that is separate. This used to all be one giant card for the platforms and total hosts. These cards are also clickable to filter by your label. And then also if you wanted to access through tabbing, you can do that as well to get to any of those cards. What else? If you do not have any platforms, for example this team here, you'll see the counts with 0 cards. So all 6 of them will show up, and that is responsive. So if it gets too narrow, it changes.
All right, next up, Rachel again, we're more consistency updates around table row clickability. As a user of the platform, I want to experience the UI, the UI of tables consistently, so that I can easily understand what the interactions will do. And back to Rachel here.
Consistent table row clickability. So this is a new one. So just heads up, if you wanted to click on anything that says view all hosts now, sorry, I'm on no Teams. So this view all host link is not clickable anywhere except if you click on that view all host link, which it underlines. So you can go ahead and click that here. The reason being is in some places, like software, for example, here's a software details page. When you click on this row, you would expect to go to the details of that version. You wouldn't expect to see view all hosts filtered. So if I go ahead and click that, you can see details of this. If I go ahead and click this, you'll see details of vulnerability. If you go ahead and click this, you'll see vulnerable software. You can go back and forth. But it isn't until you actually click the view all host link that you're going to go to the host filtered by that vulnerability, that software, that whatever you are what do you call it? Filtering by. So even this, like, you have to go to the view all host link here in order to click on that. So that's the new pattern that has been supported by customers in what they expect.
All right, next up, we're doing a show download URL for Fleet maintained apps. As an IT admin at Fleet, I want to see the download URL of Fleet maintained apps so that I can verify Fleet is downloading the software from a trusted third-party vendor.
Hey everyone, this is a new feature for 4.64, show download URL for Fleet maintained apps. The user story is, as an IT admin at Fleet, I want to see the download URL for Fleet maintained apps so that I can verify that Fleet is downloading the software from a trusted third-party vendor. So now when you go into the UI and you are on a specific team and you click Add Software, your options for Fleet maintained apps are going to show you the details in a modal that include the download URL. So here you can see on Tooltip, Fleet downloads the package from the URL and stores it, and hosts download it from Fleet before install. This is on every single software that is in this Fleet maintained apps section.
All right, next up, this is one of the bigger stories we had in the sprint around labels and editing for VPP apps.
Hey everybody, Rachel here. We're going to go over this new feature from the software team for 4.64. So it's going to sound very similar to a feature we already have, but we are now scoping for the App Store apps. So as a user, specifically an IT admin, I want to install the App Store apps during the first boot or later only on macOS hosts that are members of a specific label, so that I can scope software installs more granularly. So we currently have this for Fleet maintained apps. We are now adding this to our App Store apps as well. So as long as you are on a team or no team, so not all teams, you can add software to the team. So here I am on no teams, so I'm going to add software to any host that is not assigned to a team. Specifically, I want to add App Store apps. So I need MDM enabled, I need Apple Business Manager connected, and I need my App Store apps purchased via Apple Business Manager. Here, maybe I want to add, let's go ahead and add Reddit for phones. And I want to target custom client B. And I'm going to click on Add Software. And so now I can add App Store apps to client B only. Oh, sorry. I'm going to add Reddit to client B only, so you can see that here in my list of apps. Here you can see on Edit, we are now able to see an edit modal for App Store apps. That is also a new feature that we had added. And you can see that we have targeted client B only. Now say maybe we don't want Reddit for client B, we want to exclude only client A labels. So I'm going to click on these three labels and exclude client A and hit save. It's going to ask you to confirm your changes as long as it's a change outside of self-service. And now we successfully edited this app for excluding client A. Ta-da! We also added this to our activity feed. So if you are on your main page, you're able to see an activity feed for all teams. And you can see that I edited and added Reddit app to no team. So if I click on this, I can see my details that I initially added this to include client B. And now you can see that it was edited to target excluding client A labels. And that's it.
Great. I'm going to call out Haziel here. Thank you very much. That was the bulk of the effort. Tons of squirrely things with VPP and scoping and unscoping there. You want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. It wasn't in the demo, but this works in GitOps too. I think that's the only other thing. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, next up, I'm going to pass it over to Ian for better API responses on host, lock, unlock, and wipe.
And by the way, thanks to Janice for letting me borrow her MDM environment to record the video that I'm about to play. As an IT admin, I want to get more information from the lock host API so that I can automate confirmation that the host was locked. In Fleet 464, we're doing this. Let's take a look. So, first off, we will lock this host. API response shows the device status and pending action, which are new. Previously, you had to call this endpoint and then call the host details endpoint in order to get the current device status and pending action. All right, now we are going to unlock it once I refresh the page. Hardware is now unlocked. And there is our response for that API endpoint. The device status and pending action are new. Host ID and unlock pin were there previously. And now we're going to wipe the host. Which device status and pending action are there. The API documentation for this will be available on the public REST docs when we release. For now, you can look at the docs branch, which is here, here, and here. All right, that's it for that feature. Back to you, Tim.
Great, and that wraps up features for the software team.
Great, thank you. That concludes our features shipping in 4.64. So now we're going to go through bug fixes and improvements and hand it back to George and MDN.
Alrighty, just got a couple ones to go over right here. We're going to go over them pretty quick. For most of these, they're a little self-explanatory. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat or verbally if you need. We upgraded our GitHub cache action to version 4.20. There were issues with the previous one related to resolving a dependency that had a vulnerability. Thank you to Gabe for fixing both of those. The macOS target deadline hover text is incorrect, so that was just a little copy change. And then we've got inconsistent spacing and automation modals between lists of policies and labels. Again, just a little spacing change. We've got full error not shown in table or tooltip. Let's take a look at what that one looked like. You would see it in the profiles OS settings status, and you wouldn't get the full picture. So now on some of those that are extra long or having weird characters, it's been cleaned up and you can see it all properly now. We've got BYOD, iPhone, iPad steps are incomplete. This one also had plenty of pictures, so it was just missing a couple of these that have now been added when you go to download your enrollment profile for BYOD. We've got verifying message for configuration profiles mentioning verifying with OS Query for devices where OS Query isn't available. Again, iPhones and iPads and soon to be Androids don't have OS Query running on them. So this is just a misnomer. They've been updated where if it's specifically for those devices, it won't say verifying with OS Query. We've got cleanup failed to remove configuration profiles. Now, this is one where a couple of hosts have hit this issue where you've added a profile and then you kind of probably deleted it very quickly was the most frequent issue, reason why we saw this show up. And so in that case, for that host that never actually received it, they would have this permanent stuck error that says failed to remove this profile because of course it didn't exist. Instead of fixing that holistically, we have some fixes that prevent that from happening in the future, but there was nothing that went and cleaned up the previous iteration. So this is a query that anyone who still runs into this issue, this is specifically for support. If somebody comes with help, I still have some that are failed to remove and they're not going away. This is the quick hot fix. Just running this on their database will clean up those.
Yeah, let me just add for this one. I think we want to try it out on our own dog fooding instance first. So we still need to do that. I'm going to be meeting with the other Gabe next week about that. And then once we just make sure everything is, it doesn't do anything crazy, we'll let clients know that they can use this, or we can even run this for our cloud-based customers if needed.
Thank you for that clarification. And then we've got two from Sarah. One was a particularly gnarly case where the encryption key was not being escrowed properly. So taking a look at here, there was some instances where the flow would result in no escrow key ever being escrowed into Fleet. And so thank you, Sarah, for doing the due diligence to try and fix all of those very strange edge cases. And then we've got one last one from Sarah that this one says device configured command is sometimes not sent to macOS host during setup assistant. While we haven't still figured out the exact cause for this, we have added additional logging that should help us be able to debug and close this issue very soon with the upcoming Fleetctl release of 1.39. All right, and Victor, I'll let you go ahead and present yours.
All right, thank you, George. I'm going to go ahead and present. So just a note, we had a few P1 issues this sprint, and because 463 was delayed, we ended up still working, on the 462 code base. So it's kind of a unusual situation that we ended up working on so many minor releases during one sprint. So this first issue, pretty major issues, is that we had a bug where the MDM profiles were not guaranteed to be delivered to more than one host. So one host was guaranteed to get it, and the rest were not. Now this issue wasn't obvious because we resend the profiles. So for a small number of hosts, it may seem like it was working, but for any host that happened to be resent on the same minute, only one of them would get the profile. So this was fixed. The other issue was actually we have been having a lot of bug backlog in the MDM team, and some of those kind of have a fuzzy line between features and bugs. So this was a semi-feature, is we added support for ADMX policies. So ADMX policies is a way of specifying the data in your body using kind of like this syntax. And so we now support this, and we're able to verify that an ADMX policy was applied to a device. And the reason this also went out in the patch as opposed to 464 is because it shared code with this previous fix, so it was just easier to roll it into the patch. So next one, another kind of P1 issue. I know Sarah did most of the work on encryption issues this sprint, and we added this one feature where we're archiving the disk encryption keys. And the way we're doing this, the reason we're doing this is because sometimes when people move devices around, it may take up to several hours before the new disk encryption key is visible in Fleet. So now what we're doing is whenever a disk encryption key is created or updated in Fleet, we save a copy of it, which we never delete. And the database migration, moves all existing keys into this archive table. So we have an encrypted list of all the encryption keys that have ever been created on a Fleet server. All right, moving on to another fun issue. So over the last couple of sprints, we've had issues kind of reproducing things that people have been seeing in dog food. So one of those mysteries has been solved, is that we had about half of our Apple devices in dog food were disconnected from MDM, either because they had an expired certificate or they had the when they were enrolled, they were enrolled with a different APNS, with a different Apple push certificate, so they were not getting notified when we were trying to push profiles to them. So this is, I mean, I feel like this is a little bit related to the MDM profiles, is that seems like we kind of been normalized to see a lot of things pending in dog food, and that should not be the case. Basically, whenever you see a profiles, MDM profiles should always go to verified within about an hour, within an hour if the device is online. So this means that if it's not, that means the device is somehow disconnected from the Fleet server partially, or we have a bug. So just a public service announcement: if you see issues where profiles are not going into verified, watch out for those. Related issue, we added some logging for DDM profiles, so that we can, in the future, we can do a better job debugging when DDM profiles are not going into verified. And also thank you for Alan for kind of driving the cleanup of dog food. I think he's been pinging some people, and he also added a policy that kind of catches the APNS issue. Okay, a couple more here, smaller ones. We kind of continued some cleanup with server errors. So we now, whenever a user sends in an invalid value to the server, if the server returns an illegal argument error, we no longer log it as an error. We still log it, but it's no longer an error. So that kind of helps if we're looking for like server issues, if we're searching for errors. So these types of things will not show up in the logs if you're just searching for errors. And the last one is just a small Windows MDM fix. So whenever Windows MDM sends its first request to the server, it uses a session ID of 0, so it's 0 indexed, and we were saying 0 was invalid. So that's a small fix. All right, back to Luke.
Great. Thank you, Victor and MDM team. A lot of great fixes there. And Brock summarized the PSA well. Configuration profiles. See something, say something is the message to drive home there. Otherwise, if we don't, we normalize a buggy behavior, and then we just end up kind of accepting it. All right, next up, we're going to go over to orchestration for bug fixes and improvements.
Thank you, Luke. And Luke, seems like the public wants mascot, so can't resist that. So Orca teams, bug fixes, and contributions. Let's start with Jacob. Hopefully you see the right screen.
Jacob here with a quick overview.
We're actually on your Slack screen.
Improvements.
Oh. Okay. 1 second, something went wrong.
Oh yeah, we'll do Drew a favor. Pineapple, pineapple, pineapple.
Okay, let's start from the beginning.
Jacob here with a quick overview of bug fixes and improvements. This was a P2 customer reported bug where different hosts with the same host name were being treated as the same host when editing label membership. Here's a quick overview of the fix.
We have test label 1. You can see dev macvm with this hostname dev macvm.local and serial number Z starting in ZXR is in the label. And then when we search for that name, we see another host with the same name but different serial number starting with ZRN available to add to the label. So let's try adding that, and we'll look at the network. So we save the label, we patch the label. It's got each of those unique. No, that's the response. So the patch has each of those serial numbers of the different hosts, and then the response contains the unique Fleet host IDs for each one of them. Let's open this up a bit. So that's good. Now, what if we delete both? Okay, and what if we add just one? So now they're both not in a label. We have both. We see the differing serial numbers. Let's add ZXR. And now we see that this label contains the ZXR host, but not the Z. I think it was NR is the name. Yeah, ZRN. So the actions for them are now distinct. Just try one more thing. Let's try deleting only one. So we're going to delete ZXR and leave ZRN. And we see we still have in the label we have ZRN, and we do not have ZX, the other one. But now that's an option to add ZXR. So they are decoupled.
And these were some major housekeeping improvements to the confirm invite flow. So firstly, we're now checking whether an invite is valid. Before we were just presenting the form as if it were valid and then erroring when it was invalid, as well as a bunch of housekeeping improvements here. Refactoring to TypeScript, functional components, a bunch of engineering stuff here. Here we had a bug on the policies page where pagination was broken in certain situations related to changing the team dropdown, and that is now fixed. There's a demo video you can see if you'd like. Team admins were not being presented the MFA field as they should have been, and we included the relevant information from the API to enable that. Here we had a bug where when the user is editing the agent options and they went to a different tab and came back, their edits were gone. Now you see in this little GIF that here we make edits, we go to a new tab, we come back and they're still there. Some nice UI, UX improvements here, making these error states a little more clear. And as this GIF will show you, we've got better handling of very long team names with shorter viewport widths.
Okay, these were Jacob's fixes, and let's move to Scott's. I do not have a video for that, so we'll just go one by one, quickly describing the issues. So we'll start with a team policy automation webhook set through UI, not overwritten by GitOps. So that was a something that was set by UI, and then if you have a GitOps rule for that, it doesn't get it, it doesn't delete that. That was fixed. Second, add parameter to exclude fleet maintained apps in list software API. So this is a change in API. We added a way to exclude the list of software maintained apps. That was the issue here. Next, apparently maintainers were able to change activity automation, which they are not allowed. The problem was only in UI. The backend did not allow it, but the UI allowed it, and there was an error. So that is fixed in the UI. Manual labels with large number of hosts returning errors. This was some kind of a race condition or some other performance thing. This was fixed. Next, this was a dependency that we had in the code that caused some issues. Occasionally, I had this. I tried to compile at some time, and then the node SAS was doing problems. Scott replaced it with just the source dependency that solved the problem. Small fix, but nice one. Another fix was there is a column in a table called users that is called email. And it runs and gives results, but it wasn't mentioned in the table. And this was fixed. So now we have the email. And that's it for Scott. We have two more. These are all squares, sorry. So that's it for Scott. And we'll move to Lucas. Take it, Lucas.
All right. Let me just see the issues. All right. So this first bug, there were crashes of MySQL because of high CPU usage. And we found that some of our MySQL queries to ingest software from host was not using indexes properly. So we fixed the queries. We actually split the query into two. And now we should get better performance there. This one was, so let me open this one. Users were not seeing query reports for some of the queries for some devices. And then we realized that this user in particular had this specific very hidden OS query option, which was basically sending the query results in a different format, in a format Fleet wasn't expecting, which is the event type format. So the fix was to actually support this. So now even if the user has this weird setting set to true, Fleet will actually parse that and show the report. And then critical vulnerability reported by Trivi in Fleet Docker image. So we fixed the vulnerability there. And we are adding, in the near future, probably next spring, we're adding some scanning of our Docker images so that we can detect those instead of users or customers. So we'll have a good process to fix this in the future. Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. And last for the bug fixes, we have Dante with a bunch of bugs as well. Take it, Dante.
Sharing my screen. So the first bug was this one, which was the SMTP hello was not being set to the correct domain when sending outgoing mail, so it would cause some authentication to fail depending on who you were contacting. That was a really easy fix. This one was probably the easiest bug fix I've ever done. I just had to move a script from one folder to another, just because we had a duplicate script and it was causing a bit of confusion. This one on re-enrollment, when devices were enrolled through Apple Business Manager, the old host activities for those devices would appear on the host page, even though the host had been deleted. There were several parts of Fleet which weren't ABM host aware, so that involved fixing several tables to add soft deletes for events. And finally, there was an update for Fleetctl package so that the command now shows operating system specific install instructions when you're generating packages instead of the generic just double click the installer. There's also one last one. Sorry, I forgot. Where Fleetd now launches OS query with the system drive set from the environment that it receives instead of leaving it blank, which is useful for scanning for certain vulnerabilities. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's the Orca team's bug fixes.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, over to software and Tim Lee.
All right. Yeah, fair amount of bugs. This release on the software team, we're going to start with Ian. might be on mute.
Of course I was. All right. So first off, we have Python builds where basically there's some suffixes to version strings there that make the reported build from OS query not match what we would see in NVD for CVEs. This is a partial fix. We have some additional work coming in for properly matching to pre-releases as well. But this gets us, for example, going from this .1150 that encodes into it that this is the final release on Python 3.9.1, and that'll actually show up as 3.9.1 now in the version list. This is a Windows specific issue. Mac OS, at the very least, shows up the versions as 3.9.1 normally. There's more context here. Next up, we have a node upgrade to 2018.1. We were on like node 18 or something like that for builds of JS stuff. We don't use node server side, but for the JavaScript and TypeScript stuff we do. So this does that. And then installers, if a package doesn't have a version, previously we were kicking that back. We removed that constraint and instead noted when an installer is uploaded without a version, because even with fallbacks, we weren't able to find one. So if you want to have like a removal tool script or something like that that the vendor doesn't version, then that's entirely possible to upload now. Additionally, it's a quick sentence case copy fix for the encryption profile shown in OS settings on Windows and Mac, sorry, on Windows and Linux. This is kind of a fake profile. There's actually some stuff going on under the hood there. But so we were able to tweak the title there. So we're matching with our UI guidelines of using sentence case everywhere. Also, we were previously delivering JS and CSS assets for the Fleet dashboard without any sort of transport layer encryption, or sorry, transport layer compression. There we go. And now we are gzipping those payloads on the way out, so that we have about 75% or so smaller file sizes over the wire. That does make some impact for our built versions, but also when we're doing dev and things aren't being minified, there's a massive impact, particularly when you're running things through, say, ngrok or a slower connection. Additionally, there are some vulnerability fixes that hit our vulnerability feed, either NVD or the vulnerabilities feed. NVD gets built out every day. Vulnerabilities feed gets built out every 30 minutes. This one fixed a false negative for IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition on Windows. And that is it for my fixes. Tim, you want me to go ahead and talk through Constantine since?
Sure.
All right, so Constantine's were a bit more involved. For one, on macOS hosts, really macOS, iPadOS, iOS, anything with a bundle ID, the way we were determining uniqueness in the database for software titles, if you had two packages with the same name but different bundle IDs, those should have been reported differently, but were causing a conflict due to uniqueness constraints in the database. We have now fixed that to where if there is an entry for, as an example, JetBrains IntelliJ versus the JetBrains IntelliJ EAP, those have different bundle IDs. They should be reported differently as different software titles for consistency. Those would potentially show up as the same name for the app name, and now they will show up as different software titles rather than the first one in getting reported and the other one coming in due to the uniqueness constraint violation getting dropped. Additionally, this is a cleanup for a better cleanup for I believe a P1 from a few months ago. Mac OS older versions sometimes had this rapid security release suffix on version numbers. And there were a few places where that would potentially cause issues in our code. So we've wrapped those, trimmed that non-Semver compliant suffix, and now those areas work. And that is it for Constantine's. Back to you, Tim.
All right, actually, I'm going to pass it over to Haziel.
Hello. Share my screen. And yeah, I got some bugs to go over here. This one, originally it seemed like it was some network or load balancer issue, but it was actually a bug in how we were getting the ID of the BPP token. So basically the customer was trying to edit their BPP token, but was getting this error when trying to do it. And yeah, it was just that we weren't pulling the ID out of the request correctly. So fixing that fixed the issue. The next one is this issue where BPP token assignment change would clear out all of the associated apps, even if the team stayed the same. So like let's say you had team 1 and team 2 on the assigned to the token, and you changed it so it was team 1 and team 3. It would delete the apps from team 2 because you removed that, but it would also remove the apps from team 1, and you don't want that because it's still assigned. So this was just an update in the method that does that removal to check and make sure that it was actually a team that was removed from assignment and not just a team that stayed assigned even as part of that assignment operation. So the next one was pretty tricky, and thanks to Dale for helping a lot with being able to reproduce this and dig into it. But this was an issue with installing CrowdStrike Falcon, and it was manifesting as like the install would succeed, but Fleet would record an error for the software install. And after a lot of tinkering, we were able to find that CrowdStrike Falcon, when you install it, it sets up a network extension, and that causes the network connections to fail for a very short amount of time, like very, very briefly after during the install process. So that window of the network being interrupted was overlapping with Fleetd sending back the what's it called, the response, like, or sending back the status, sorry, the status of the install. So the network request would fail, and then the install would happen again. But as part of that install, that second install would fail, and so Fleet would get a failed install status that second time. So the fix for this was basically just adding retry to when we send back the status of the install, and that was the fix there. So it fails the first time, but it succeeds the second time that it retries once the network is back to normal, and we get the correct status. And finally, this is one that we caught because of some networking limitations with ngrok, which we use for testing and trying to install big software installers. And so that process would time out. And then because of the way the code is structured in the installation process on Fleetctl, the error would cause the cleanup of the temporary directory we create during installation to never be cleaned up. So this was just kind of shuffling the code around so that the cleanup happens every time, no matter what error is out. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to go over Rachel's bugs and improvements. Oh, try that again with sound. All right. Coming down the home stretch here. Just a missing error here in low bandwidth situations, probably when uploading software. That is now fixed. At least the error is clear. Next one, I'm going to show a video because it is a global change you might be interested in.
Consistent drop-down selection is basically on any of the drop-downs we now are consistently showing this color for what's highlighted in a bold text for what is already chosen, and then when you start hovering over something else, it will change that color, background color, but it'll keep the bold text on what was originally hovered on. And that's for every single drop-down across the entire app. It's now consistent.
All right, besides that, we have some overflow. Let's see. You can see here, kind of overflowing above the past the browser size. That is fixed as well. Some icon issues. You see the icon here is a little cut off on software for the self-service icon. Tooltip position. Yes, this is also kind of on the consistency vein. This is now shown below the text there. We also have 3 items. We actually demoed these last sprint, but they are going into this release. So if you're interested in those, check out last demo. And that is it. That wraps it up for the software team. Besides OS Query.
Awesome. Great work, everyone. I'll speak to the OS Query contributions real quick since Scott and Constantine aren't here. Unless, Sharon, do you want to talk to Scott? I see your name there.
Yeah, sorry, did you say Scott is here? No, I don't think Scott is here. So yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully this is the right screen. So we have 2 not so glamorous, but still a nice contribution to OS Query. The first one is above where Lenovo hardware running Ubuntu did not return the desired value in one of the columns, which is the hardware model. Here we see what we are supposed to see in another hardware. We are supposed to see some kind of a hardware model. This was not true for Ubuntu running on Lenovo, and Scott fixed that. And the second one was a permission issue with creating logs with OS Query. I will not go over the underlying things, but there was a permission error. Scott fixed it. I take it back. It is glamorous. That's it.
Great, thank you. And over to Tim for OS Query.
You're glamorous, Sharon.
Thank
just real quick, yeah, this is we did get this merged. It should be going out in 5.16, the next OS Query release, largely around Python packages and returning incomplete results. It's looking for certain paths for Python packages. We're kind of expanding that, as you can see here. Minimal amount currently reported, where if you run like a pip list, it shows a lot more things in there. So that should be going out, and we'll follow that up with some additional changes to our host vitals to take advantage of that.
Great. Thanks, everybody. A lot of great bug fixes and some good features going out with this release. That was Sprint 36, Fleet E4 64.0, codenamed Krypton. As Superman would say, to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, but I'll say to openness, transparency, and a better tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend. Bye.